cleanup on the horizon, the lake's future was uncertain. Santee Cooper owned the Granger plant and still today owns the land and the lake. In 2018, the company drained the lake, revealing a future for Lake Busbee. Though legally they were only required to clean the nearby ash ponds, Santee Cooper chose to work in Lake Busbee on their own. The power company took to the mud, cleaning the lake bed, recycling the spent ash, and planting 180 acres of seedlings.
It would have filled in eventually. It just would have taken a lot longer. So we planted, I think, 60,000 swamp tupelo and bald cypress, and then another 6,400 different kinds of oaks. Busbee we did on our own accord. We just wanted to fill that in, bring it back to its natural state.
The way it was in 1966, before the Granger coal plant came to town, turning Lake Busbee back into a thriving wetland.
It was sort of an interesting ecological experiment, really a very interesting ecological experiment. You very seldom have such a big area like that where suddenly you're going to change the state variables that maintain the system. Okay, let me say from an ecologist perspective, this is just a wonderful natural experiment.
And now, a decade after the coal plant's decommissioning, you can step over a small wooden footbridge and find this. Once near lifeless, there now rests an untamed, wild environment surrounded on all sides by life. It's been 56 years since this 325 acres looked anything like a wetland, but today the efforts of Santee Cooper have started to bear fruit. In some cases, literally.
Because of it being used as a cooling pond for Granger, there were concerns about water contamination and contamination to the soils. What we've come to find is that the water quality was actually really good. So we have seen that there are residual amounts of heavy metals in the soils. So you would never really want it to be a development where people are going to live. But in terms of recreation and having it return to a wetland, it's a perfect use for it.
Swamps and wetlands typically have more acidic water and lower dissolved oxygen, and Busbee is no exception. The plants and animals that live here, like this slider turtle, are perfectly adapted for this kind of environment. They have to be. Life in a swamp is hard. Every animal and plant that now calls Busbee home is built for survival. Cypress trees can grow underwater. Thorns and twisting vines line the canopies in some places, and only in the Carolinas will you find native populations of the world's most famous carnivorous plant, the Venus flytrap. In an environment so hostile, these adaptations are key, be it a hard shell for defense, powerful venom to subdue prey, or even camouflage. Gray tree frogs are common in the foliage around Busbee. Not only does their skin allow them to blend into the bark of trees, but they can also emit a toxic secretion that can irritate the eyes and noses of potential predators. But of all the common sights at the lake, the egret is likely to stand out the most. Their pristine white feathers hardly blend in with the greens of the trees and the muck of a wetland. In the 19th century, these plumes were used to decorate women's hats. An ounce of egret feathers could cost as much as $32, more than an ounce of gold at the time. This led to over-harvesting, which put egret populations in a steep decline. Some of the first conservation legislation in the United States was enacted to protect these birds, and their numbers have blossomed since. an appropriate figurehead for an ecosystem returning from its own decline. Its long neck is perfectly built for their hunting style. Their esophagus actually runs behind their spine, giving them incredible flexibility. Two of their vertebrae are specially built as well, allowing them to strike with their beaks like a spear gun. But the egret's most standout adaptation isn't its fancy coat or its pliable neck, but rather their long, nimble legs. Standing over 3 feet tall, these wading birds can easily navigate the uneven terrain under the surface of Lake Busbee. The lake bed and the surrounding area isn't flat. It is full of small hills and streams. This diverse landscape was a major key to the redevelopment of Lake Busbee.
When they stopped pumping water in the lake, I was really surprised just how much depth diversity there was out there. There were some places where even when they stopped pumping the water in, there was standing water persisted. But then these other areas, land areas, emerged. And so you had a lot of topographic diversity out there. And as far as a wetland creation situation, that's what you really want.
The deepest parts of the lake, around just 4 feet, gave aquatic vegetation a place to grow. The shallow wetland areas could then be dominated by cattails and other herbaceous plants, and the higher elevated levels allow more woody flora to germinate. And with vegetation comes animal life. Green anoles often use the denser foliage around the lake for nesting and hunting. But this anole in particular has something else in mind. This male is in search of a mate. Anoles will bob their heads up and down almost like a dance and extend their brightly colored dewlap to entice a female. Lucky for this male, he doesn't need to look far. Anoles are the most common lizard found in the trees in South Carolina. They can change color, similar to a chameleon, but restricted to browns and greens. These talents for climbing and camouflage are used to hunt. A small nest of ants sits at the bottom of the tree, and its worker drones are exploring the nearby area to expand their range. But many of them will not make it back. Anoles are gluttonous animals, and this female is embracing the buffet. The male tries his best again and again, but he can't seem to hold the lady's attention. It's hard to compete with a good meal. Before long, the male can't help but join in. But these lizards are not the only predators who use the tree canopy around the lake as their hunting grounds. Some creatures use a much more patient approach to get their meals. The golden silk orb weaver spider. Sometimes called banana spiders due to their large yellow abdomen, they're South Carolina's largest native spider. Their legs can be longer than a human hand. Their webs, which glisten gold in the sunlight, can reach lengths of over 6 feet. Typical of spiders, the males are much smaller, and they tend to play more of a support role on a web, biding their time for reproduction opportunities. The silk webs have a tensile strength 8 times that of steel. The chemical process of making such powerful silk is complex, passing through silk glands and into the spider's spinnerets, where it then uses its legs to weave a trap. Vibrations in the web signal when prey has been caught. A beetle has flown into the web. The spider wastes no time and begins wrapping the large prey into a cocoon. The male bounds onto the female, hoping to seize an opportunity in the frantic violence to attempt to reproduce. In the frenzy, though, the spider drops its meal. The beetle scurries away, panicked but alive. The male spider, knowing it is now in danger, gently crawls away. Using a sort of safety line, the female finds its way back to the center of the web. Though the beetle has escaped, the successful spider has plenty of food stored away. Though they may look threatening, orb weaver venom is harmless to humans. The trees around Busbee are full of life like this, successful animals built for living in an environment that once was not there. But nestled high in their throne, far above the lake and the trees, resides the royalty of Busbee. The Osprey. These large raptors were nesting around Lake Busbee long before the Granger coal plant closed. With a wingspan just shy of 6 feet, these birds would nest on the power poles going through the lake and make their way out to the nearby Waccamaw River for food. But now, much of their meal gathering is done at the lake. Ospreys are piscivorous, consuming primarily fish, and they have specific adaptations for this lifestyle. When they find a target, they hover in place, carefully calculating their approach. Their feathers are dense and oily, preventing them from getting waterlogged, which is important for hitting the water at over 50 miles an hour. Ospreys can close their nostrils to keep out water during these dives. With reversible outer toes and backwards-facing scales on their talons, once they have a grip on their prey, it's not going anywhere. Most of the bird life living around Busbee use its water and its inhabitants to survive now, no longer needing to travel to other rivers and ponds.
There's enough life within the wetland to sustain all that bird life. You know, birds need a good bit of energy to do what they do. Flying's hard. So the fact that this wetland can sustain all that life just speaks to the quality of the environment that's there now.
At least the bald cypress and the swamp tupelo are really growing in. The oaks are struggling a little bit because the native vegetation is taking over and kind of pushing those out, and that's fine. We want it to be a natural habitat, and so just by, you know, seeds in the air and birds and things like that, it's really starting to fill in nicely. The more trees you have in the ground, the more water they're going to soak up.
The marshier side of the lake is where the real success story can be seen for this new wetland.
Swamps and wetlands act as filtration for our rivers and for our waters. So in an area like Conway, where you have a lot of areas that are developed and there's a lot of impervious surfaces, so you have a lot of runoff, that polluted runoff typically enters our swamps before it gets to our river, and those swamps are able to filter out the pollutants, whether it's bacteria or sediments or even nutrients, before it gets to the Waccamaw. So when we do our water quality testing, we don't see evidence of those pollutants like we do when we test in our swamps. They are a net, they are a filter, they just suck everything in and take it out before it can get to the rivers.
As far as flooding is concerned, those wetlands tend to hold that water, and it sort of sits there for some undetermined amount of time instead of running off. And of course, if it's not running off and it's being held there, that of course is an important aspect of avoiding the flooding. Anything that runs in there is indeed going to be probably held and processed, and that's a good thing.
As it is now, Lake Busbee can hold 635 million gallons of water as a wetland. That's water that wouldn't end up in the homes and the roads and all the places in Conway that typically flood. It can now spread out into that wetland, hang out there, slow down the flow of the water, and soak back into the soils, which is huge. That's almost 1,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools of water. That's phenomenal. And to have that ability is a huge boon to our city.
It might not be that large of a part of the county, but it's certainly us doing our part to make sure that we're helping keep the environment, maintain, and restore the environment that we had.
And those efforts have helped create a working ecosystem, a complex, functioning food web. Though this bullfrog is hoping to make a meal of a dragonfly, he himself is the target of an even more deadly predator. Unlike many snakes, the common water snake hunts at all times of day. These non-venomous snakes are well adapted for an aquatic existence. They track prey with a combination of sight and smell. Their acute sense of smell can even be used underwater. Most shocking to see, though, is their ability to expand their jaw up to 4 times their normal size. In an agonizing 15 minutes, the frog has been consumed. This meal will keep the snake fed for nearly a week. Though fearsome predators in their own right, these water snakes are far from the top consumers in the food web at Lake Busbee. What holds that spot is an animal far more ancient, nearly unchanged since the time of the dinosaurs. Stealthy ambush predators stalk the waters of this wetland. The apex predator of the lake, the American alligator. Capable of reaching lengths of over 15 feet and weighing more than 1,200 pounds, the alligator plays one of the most important roles in a working wetland ecosystem. If an environment does not have a top predator to control the number of animals in a region, plant life can be overconsumed, leading to the downfall of that area. Alligators eat just about everything. As adults, their main prey are medium-sized mammals like raccoons, but they have been known to attack larger animals like deer and even people. A common thing on their menu here, though, is fish. When hunting fish, they rush forward and bring their head down sideways. Their mouth can snap shut in just 50 milliseconds. But they don't always hit the mark, landing a meal only about 50% of the time they strike. On the harder days, alligators can sometimes be seen half-heartedly digging in the mud for easier, albeit much smaller, prey. Like some of us, crayfish are on the menu. Though massive and dangerous, sporting over 80 conical teeth in their powerful jaws, these predators can often be seen lounging around. This is called sunning, something all cold-blooded animals do to regulate their body temperature. Life on the lake isn't always excitement, and alligators are far from the only ones you can find taking it easy. Without the Granger coal plant needing this area to act as a cooling pond, work trucks and maintenance crews are a rare sight anymore. Less noise, less hustle and bustle as nature reclaims the remnants of what used to be a service road. Small fish even take the opportunity of a slow day for some free delivery. They quietly move around the alligator's body as it rests in the muck, eating the various algae and grasses that Reptile has collected over time. The act doesn't benefit the alligator much, but for the fish, it's a risk-free meal. They're too small to be of interest to the alligator, and the gator's presence scares off any other potential predators. Anhinga can also be found lazing about the shores of the lake. They sun like alligators do, but for very different reasons. Unlike most water birds like ducks or osprey, anhinga do not have waterproof feathers. Without oil glands or insulating feathers, they rely on the sun's heat to dry them out and maintain their body temperature. The American alligator has the 4th strongest bite force in the world, snapping shut at an astounding 2,980 psi. For context, a human femur takes just 1,700 psi to shatter. Fortunately, these birds are just as good at flying as they are swimming. Anhinga recognize a threat when they see one. Anhinga have dense bones that help them submerge their bodies to stalk prey. The females have lighter colored heads compared to the males, and though it looks like this female is eating, she has something else in mind. She's a mother with chicks awaiting their lunch. They build their nest in trees, typically in small colonies alongside other birds. When the chicks are young, Anhinga parents feed the chicks by dripping regurgitated fish into their bills. But these children are a little older. They put their heads right into their parents' mouths to get their fresh-caught food.
Many of these wetlands are incredible wildlife habitats because there's just so much of this wetland around and so much of this wildlife habitat. It really is a rich area as far as biological diversity. We have to take care of this area. We got to make sure, you know, that what happens here is good and we keep it clean.
There are microfibers and things like that that are going to degrade over time, and that's why we have microplastics throughout our watersheds, in our fish that we eat, even in our own bodies. We're just like animals and plants. We need a healthy environment to persevere and flourish just like those animals do.
In the small, dry, pine tree inhabited area outside of the lake, an expecting mother has began her preparations. The process of egg laying for a slider turtle is quite the workout. She scrapes with her back feet against the dirt, digging a hole just a few inches deep. With the primitive nest dug, she begins laying her eggs. Slider turtles can lay anywhere from 2 to 30 eggs each season. The eggs are fertilized as they are laid. Once she is finished, she buries the eggs to incubate. The entire process takes around an hour. Her job finished, the next generation given a safe area to grow, she heads back to the waters of the lake.
Right now, Lake Busbee has kind of emerged as a really premier wildlife habitat. It's not that many places still existing in this country where you can have that close and consistent interaction with the natural world. It's a great place.
And it's going to continue to change over the next, 10, 15, 20 years. And I think it gives us hope for what are the possible remediations for coal plants or these areas that were considered desolate and were considered impacted. It's really exciting to see Lake Busbee become the Busbee wetlands.
Now we're just monitoring it and making sure everything comes in, just bringing it back to its natural state. That's how it was before we bought it. We put Granger up in 1966, so it's been a while. It's nice to see it grown back in.
And now, a decade after the coal plant's decommissioning, you can step over a small wooden footbridge and find this. Once near lifeless, there now rests an untamed, wild environment surrounded on all sides by life.
Looking to remodel your shower or bath this fall? Well, look no further, because West Shore Home can help you install that new shower or bath before the Thanksgiving holiday. Hey everybody, Joe here with BJ Worzen from West Shore Home. BJ, tell us about this promotion.
That's right, Joe. I know a lot of people that are looking to get that bath remodeled before the guests start arriving for Thanksgiving. So we're going to do something really special. First, we're going to do 50% off the installation on any shower or bath project. Second, if you place that order this week, we will guarantee install by Thanksgiving, or we'll give you the entire project for free.
Wow, so you're not kidding. Guaranteed install by Thanksgiving, or the complete project is free. That's incredible, because a lot of bath companies, they're taking 3 to 4